రాజేష్ కనెక్ట్ అయింది ఇప్పుడు. అది యాక్చువల్ గా అది ఏదో ప్లగ్ లూజ్ అయింది, అది అది కూడా అట్లనే అయింది. ఏది మన మైక్రోసాఫ్ట్ టీమ్స్. Yeah, I have joined. Okay. Somebody start to present or? Good evening to everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Lokre, sir.
Yeah.
Am I audible enough, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Who is presenting the case?
Myself, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yes, sir. I'll start off, sir. So, my patient, sir, Mrs. Vijaya, is a 58-year-old woman, a housewife from Hyderabad who has studied till 6th standard. She presented to us with the chief complaint of breathlessness on exertion for the past 20 days, abdominal distension and leg swellings for 20 days, and cough with bloodstained sputum, one episode 20 days ago. Sir, in her case, the past history is quite significant and there is relevance to the present context. So I would like to start from the past, sir.
Yeah, sure.
So,
go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, 13 years ago, Mrs. Vijaya had insidious onset and gradually progressive breathlessness on routine activities, which progressed gradually over 1 to 2 years to breathlessness on even daily activities. There was no history suggestive of paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. However, there was history suggestive of orthopnea. There was no seasonal variation or cough at the time, no history suggestive of wheeze. Then there was also associated leg swelling, which was gradually progressive over a period of about 1 month, and some abdominal discomfort. There was no history of any chest pain, loss of consciousness, palpitations at the time. So she had consulted a cardiologist back then, and she was diagnosed to have a valve disease, for which she underwent a valve replacement surgery.
Okay. Or actually leading to valve replacement.
Valve replacement surgeries.
Which year was that?
About 12 years ago, sir.
About 12 years. 98.
Yeah, sir. 2008.
2008.
Yes.
Surgery, what?
Sir?
After surgery, did she improve or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She was told the surgery was successful. However, following surgery, there was only a partial improvement of symptoms, according to her. She says she was able to cook and perform some household chores and was able to do her daily self-care activities. However, she was not able to perform all her activities, as in washing clothes and going upstairs to dry the clothes, lifting weights, or even climbing upstairs, even 2 floors was difficult for her. She also says she needed 2 pillows to sleep, but then she has been using 2 pillows for a long time, so she could not be sure that it was new.
This is after surgery?
All this is after surgery, so she only got a partial relief from her symptoms.
Yeah, okay.
She was started on an oral anticoagulant. She can tell the name that it was warfarin 5 mg once daily. And she was asked to maintain a specific blood levels between 2 and 3, and they used to follow up with a doctor regularly.
Yeah.
And then sorry, I can hear myself. So they used to follow up with her doctor regularly. There were 2 or 3 episodes of the value being beyond normal or beyond the intended range, and she had minor bleeds in the form of epistaxis and an occasional cough showing blood stain. During those episodes, she would be asked to stop the medicine, and then the dose would be adjusted based on some testing.
Yeah.
Such there were 3 or 4 such episodes in the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, with these continuing complaints, she also had approximately one episode per year of increase of breathlessness associated with leg swellings and abdominal distension. The breathlessness would be there even at rest during these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So, for these, she was first evaluated approximately 4 weeks after the surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and she was told that she had heart weakness, probably ventricular dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
and she would need to continue medicines. She was put on certain medicines, which included tablet Ditor 10 mg once daily,
Mm-hmm.
and some other medicine which she could not recall.
Okay. Mm.
So, and also she was advised to, and during the for subsequent episodes, she would be told to increase the dosage. During the subsequent episodes, she would be told to increase the dosage of Ditor to twice transiently for a few days, and then once her symptoms subsided, she would go back to continuing 10 mg once daily.
I mean, twice daily or
Sir, 20
twice
mg once daily or 10 mg twice daily.
daily? Okay.
She would be told during those episodes to transiently increase the dosage for a few days. Once the symptoms subsided, she would go back to using 10 mg once daily, along with her warfarin and the other medicine. So this has been going on for the past 12 years
Mm-hmm.
after surgery. Now, again, she has presented with breathlessness of 20 days, including in activities of daily living, occasionally even at rest. There is history suggestive of orthopnea again, but no history suggestive of paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea.
Okay.
There is mild cough now, but about 20 days ago, she had cough. She had increased amount of cough with sputum production, small amounts, mucoid sputum, without any throat pain. There was one episode of blood scanty amount in sputum. However, there has been no recurrence in the last 20 days. There was also associated mild fever for about 2 to 3 days then. So at that time, she showed to a local physician and took certain oral medicines, possibly antibiotics, following which the fever, cough, and sputum subsided. Now she only has minimal dry cough.
Mm. Okay.
Now there is also a history of abdominal tightness and abdominal distension associated with leg swellings, which is more or less the same over the last 15 to 20 days. She also gives history suggestive of easy fatigability over the last 20 days. She does not, however, give any history of chest pain or chest discomfort, palpitations, loss of consciousness, or dizziness. No history suggestive of decreased urine output. If anything, there is slightly increase of her urine output over the past few days. So, with the same history, she came to us to the outpatient department to our hospital. The initial valve which was replaced was functioning normally, whereas another new valve disease was detected now, and she has been advised surgery for this valve now. She has been admitted for the last 3 days. She has received intravenous injections, following which she has passed large quantities of urine, and her symptoms have improved partially. She is able to go to the restroom by herself now within the hospital. The further investigations have been planned as of now, but she is not exactly aware of what all investigations have been planned. There is no history suggestive of any limb weakness or any other focal neurological deficits. There is no history of any hypertension, diabetes, or any major medical or surgical illnesses in the past. No history suggestive of fever with joint pains in the past, even in her childhood. No history suggestive of sudden cardiac death or premature coronary artery disease in the family. She has had a low appetite over the last 15 to 20 days. Her sleep has been affected. She is a vegetarian. There is no history of any addictions. Her obstetric history is that she is para 4, live 3. The third child, she says, it was a male child and died immediately after birth. The reasons were not clear. Her last childbirth, however, was 39 years old. 39 years earlier. She is now 58 years old. She is postmenopausal for the last 12 years approximately. There is no allergic history, and the current treatment history she was taking before admission was warfarin 5 mg once daily, Titor tablet 10 mg once daily, which was increased to 20 mg recently after the onset of breathlessness. And there is some other tablet which she is not able to recall. So I rest my history, sir.
So during the pregnancy, there was no. She was asymptomatic totally.
The pregnancies, the last childbirth was 39 years, she says, sir.
Yeah,
And
but all
symptoms
the
have only
same.
been 12.
Yeah, all the same. During the pregnancy, there was no problem.
Sir, I
pregnancy.
did not ask her for that, sir, because it seemed too large a gap.
Okay.
Not sure if you should have asked, sir.
So what do you make of the history? So a 58-year-old lady, and history started almost 13 years back.
12 years. Yes, sir.
12 years, 13 years back. Yeah, and then she became worse, has to require surgery. Surgery only had a partial relief. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what do you think are the possible causes of partial relief?
Sir, first thing could be operative failure, sir, or non-successful surgery, which she was told it was successful. The immediate post-operative echo and all we are not aware of, sir. So putting
what exactly mean by non-successful valve surgery?
Sir, one is there could be a patient prosthesis mismatch. Second is there could be more than mild valvular leakage, a paravalvular regurgitation.
And then she went on subsequently for the next 12 years with paravalvular leak, is it?
Which is again unlikely, sir.
Unlikely, right?
Yes, sir.
So,
any significant
partial relief?
Yes,
yeah, partial relief, no complete relief. It's quite likely that she had a multivalvular heart disease. Only, what do you call?
Yes,
the one seriously affected was addressed, and
operated. The other was not operated, sir. Likely a tricuspid valve disease.
Yeah,
again.
Maybe tricuspid valve disease.
It was probably not operated because the dimensions were
because
not.
There are no definite indications. So, what is your opinion regarding the presence of a moderate disease in another valve when you're operating on a one more cardiac valve which is seriously affected? What do the guidelines say?
So currently, if the other valve is even moderately affected, it will require surgery sometime in the future. So probably it is best to operate the other valve as well. If repair is possible, repair is advisable. If not, then valve replacement.
So, going by that, I think, assuming that it was properly evaluated and advised, so we feel that probably either the valve disease was underestimated in terms of its severity, or it was genuinely, mild to moderate, and probably doing a double valve surgery. Doing a double valve surgery would have been more riskier, especially when she said that she had a heart as a pump has become weak. So there must have been some reason for not doing the second valve at that point of time. It is likely that the valve was either it was underestimated, which is not uncommon. It is difficult to assess the second valve if it is proximal severity, and all said and done, probably they have estimated it as mild only and then left it alone. Or it is also possible that the patient had a mitral valve disease with severe pulmonary hypertension, and
pulmonary hypertension is another likelihood.
Pulmonary hypertension and then TR, tricuspid regurgitation, and some of them surgeons feel that once you correct
to go down.
To go down, probably, which it did
Maybe
not.
There was more of obliterative component and not just passive component. And the obliterative might have worsened.
Yep. So, possible partial relief may be, probably she had a good surgery, but she had a bad LV, or probably she had a second valve disease, which was underestimated, or probably they did not do the second valve because of high risk of cardiac, what do you call, event in the perioperative period. So there are so many things. But then she progressed, and then again now has come back with symptoms suggestive of a right heart failure.
Yes.
Progressive worsening of the swelling of the feet, fatigue, not able to perform her
Abdominal
duties.
distension.
Yeah, so okay, so let's go to the physical findings.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. On general examination, the patient is cooperative but a bit breathless. Her weight was 77 kilograms, height was 4 feet and 11 inches, and the BMI was 34 kilograms per meter square, body surface area. She is reclining at 30 degrees when examined, and there is a Lasix infusion on floor. There is no evidence of pallor, cyanosis, any clubbing. There was, however, bilateral pedal edema, which was pitting type, fast recovery, up to the knees, up to just below the knees. She is febrile clinically. The temperature was 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Her respiratory rate was 24 per minute, regular, abdominothoracic. There was evidence of axillary muscle use. Her pulse was 120 per minute, irregularly irregular, variable in volume, no special character. There is no evidence of radioradial or brachiofemoral delay. The vessel wall was compliant, and the peripheral pulses were all palpable, except the posterior tibial arteries, which are not palpable, bilaterally symmetric. Her blood pressure in the supine position at 30 degrees, reclining position, on the right arm was 130 by 80 millimeters of mercury, left arm 124 by 70 millimeters of mercury, right lower limb 120 millimeters of mercury. Column. A jugular venous pressure was
in a patient with atrial fibrillation, how did you take the systolic blood pressure?
Yes, sir. That level of systolic pressure by gradual reduction of the by gradual let out of the pressure, sir. That level of pressure wherein most of the cycles are heard, or the systolic, the Korotkov sounds are heard during most of the cardiac cycles, is to be considered as the true systolic BP. Or similarly, where we lose or get to the Korotkov 5 phase during most of the cycles is to be considered as the true diastolic BP.
You didn't say anything about apex to pulse difference.
Yes, sir. The apex pulse deficit was 20. Sir, okay. I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, sir, 20 per minute, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Jugular venous, yes, sir. The jugular venous pressure is elevated above the clavicle in the sitting position. The A wave is not seen, so X descent could not be appreciated either. The V wave is prominent, so is the Y descent. There is a normal inspiratory fall with respiration.
You made a comment that since A wave is not there, X is not obvious. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir.
So, X descent is due to what?
X descent is because of two factors, sir. One is the pull down by the, one is atrial relaxation, and the other is pulling down of the tricuspid valve by the right ventricle. So
if the A wave is atrial relaxation, might have blunted the X descent, but how do you say X descent is not there? Unless there is something else. What are the conditions in which X descent is obligatory apart from A?
When there is right ventricular dysfunction, sir, it could be obliterated.
More commonly?
Or
at a valvular heart disease like this?
Tricuspid regurgitation.
Yeah, tricuspid regurgitation.
Hello? Yes, sir. Tricuspid regurgitation is another one.
So possibly that's one of the things. So when you get a tricuspid regurgitation, there is no X descent, significant tricuspid regurgitation. When it is mild to moderate, the X is obliterated, X is blunted, and then when it is severe, X is absent. It becomes a total S wave, starting from the beginning of systole to the end of the systole. So in the examination, you should not be saying X is not there. That's why X descent is not evaluated. That's meant that probably is not correct.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Anything else you want to say? X descent is absent. V wave is there.
X descent is not appreciable, sir. V wave is prominent and Y descent is prominent. There is a
Prominent
normal
means rapid.
rapid.
Yeah, rapid Y descent.
Rapid Y descent.
Okay. So when you say rapid Y descent, you are implying that
there is no evidence of any tricuspid stenosis, any significant tricuspid stenosis.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So on precordial examination, sir, on inspection and palpation together, the chest is elliptical and symmetrical. The trachea is central. There is a midline sternotomy scar. Apex is localized in the left fifth intercostal space, half-inch lateral to the midclavicular line. It is diffuse with lateral retractions. I think it is RV type of apex. Then left parasternal lift is present, grade 2/3, systolic and ill-sustained. Left second intercostal
No, wait.
space.
You said parasternal heave is present, and then you are telling it is ill-sustained.
Lift, sir. Parasternal lift, sir. It is not a sustained lift.
No.
It is an ill-sustained lift.
Ill-sustained lift. Okay.
Sir.
Mm-hmm.
Saying it is a ill-sustained lift, sir, not a sustained parasternal heave.
So it's not a heave. It is only the ill-sustained lift. What is the implication of that?
Sir, a lift suggests volume overload rather than pressure overload, whereas a heave sustained suggests pressure overload rather than volume overload.
So you're trying to say now patient probably has only the volume overload.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Left second intercostal space parasternally. The pulmonary artery pulsations are palpable, and also second heart sound is palpable in the same area. Epigastric pulsations are palpable, sir. The tip of the finger, suggesting RV type of epigastric pulsations. There are no thrills. Sir.
Don't say RV type, indicating it is RVH. Indicating RVH.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
There are no thrills, no other palpable sounds.
No systolic thrills and no diastolic thrills.
None, sir. None, sir. Whatsoever.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
No other palpable sounds.
Mm-hmm.
On percussion, sir, left heart border corresponds to the apex. Right heart border is half-inch lateral to the right sternal border. Left second intercostal space beyond the parasternal area is also dull. Then liver dullness is percussed in the right fourth intercostal space in midclavicular line.
Mm-hmm.
On auscultation, sir, or should I
No,
wait?
liver is enlarged or not enlarged?
He is enlarged, sir. On further abdominal examination, I could find that the liver span was 20 centimeters and it was extending 5 centimeters below the midclavicular line, below the right costal margin.
Below the right costal margin in the midclavicular line. Okay.
In the midclavicular line. To just extend that, sir, it was pulsatile, tender, and firm.
Pulsatile, you should say a bit more. Is it systolic pulsations or diastolic? Is it systolic? Yeah. Okay. You have to specify. What does that indicate?
So systolic pulsations usually suggest hypertensive tricuspid regurgitation as the cause of the liver pulsations.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So on auscultation, the first heart sound is replaced by closing clicks of the valve, sir, metallic prosthetic valve.
Yeah, you have to say mechanical prosthetic mitral valve. Okay.
Mechanical prosthetic mitral valve. They are variable and high pitched and sharp in quality. The second heart sound is both components are heard and they are normally split. The second pulmonary component is loud and palpable in the left second intercostal space. Third and fourth heart sounds are not audible. No other additional sounds are audible.
Wait. It will be unwise at your stage to say fourth heart sound when the patient is in atrial fibrillation.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So don't you ever say that. So
yes.
You can just say there are no additional sounds. You can just pass it off. But if you mention that no third and fourth heart sound, it's more like a monotony rather than any sound. You are not applying your whole clinical data. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. No other additional sounds in systole or diastole. At the lower left sternal border, sir, there is a grade 3/6 soft pansystolic murmur heard with the diaphragm in the supine position, best with the breath held in inspiration, and is increased by passive leg raising. No other murmurs are audible, sir, anywhere over the precordium. On auscultation of the lungs, sir, the breath sounds are decreased over bilateral infrascapular areas, and there are few fine crackles over bilateral infrascapular areas. Rest of the lung fields are clear to auscultation, no crackles or rhonchi. On abdominal examination, there is firm and tender pulsatile hepatomegaly, systolic pulsations, up to 5 centimeters below the right costal margin in midclavicular line. The liver span was 20 centimeters. On neurological examination, there was no gross focal deficits. So the end of examinations.
So what do you conclude? What is your conclusion? Sorry, diagnosis.
Yes, sir. Provisional diagnosis clinically is that it was a post mitral valve replacement status 12 years ago with normally functioning prosthetic heart valve, mechanical prosthetic heart valve, mechanical prosthetic heart valve.
You think it is a disc valve or no? You think it is a disc valve or is it a ball and cage valve?
Sir, since it was only 12 years ago, I think it was very likely that it was a tilting disc valve, sir. Ball and cage is no longer being used.
That is one of the reasons. Any other reason? By auscultation.
Clicky, high pitch sounds which are heard with metallic valves, metallic disc valves.
No, but usually there are multiple clicks in ball and cage.
With ball and cage.
Opening and closing click both are here in ball and cage.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sir. So it's a post mitral valve replacement status 12 years ago. Mechanical prosthetic heart valve and normally functioning valve at present, likely secondary to chronic rheumatic heart disease. Currently, severe tricuspid regurgitation, hypertensive TR, no evidence of tricuspid stenosis, evidence of severe pulmonary arterial hypertension and severe pulmonary venous hypertension in congestive heart failure with New York Heart Association functional class of 3 with treatment, with atrial fibrillation with fast ventricular rate. No evidence of infective endocarditis or active rheumatic activity at present.
And your tricuspid regurgitation grade, you never said. Is it mild or severe?
Severe tricuspid regurgitation.
You didn't say that. You said TR. Okay.
Sorry. Sir.
So, putting all these things together, what do you think was responsible for the what we call suboptimal response after surgery?
Sir, putting all these things together, I think probably pulmonary hypertension, sir. Maybe the passive component was lesser and precapillary component was more, and that was not very well understood at the time of the surgery. That has
usually that's okay. But I think my guess is that probably TR was there.
Probably was there,
but only mild. Probably not addressed or underestimated the severity, and then that is the reason why the patient continued to have problems. So,
yes,
what is the current thinking about management of tricuspid valve in patients with left heart rheumatic heart disease? At what stage, and what is your criteria to address the tricuspid wall in rheumatic valve disease? You
Sir, a
understood the
mixed.
question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what are your current criteria to address the tricuspid valve when the patient is undergoing mitral valve surgery or aortic valve surgery, or both?
One is if there is primary rheumatic disease, sir, or it's an organic tricuspid valve disease.
No, organic tricuspid valve is okay, but we're talking about here is a hypertensive TR, right?
Hypertensive tricuspid
So what are
regurgitation.
you think what went
Yes,
wrong
sir.
in evaluation? What could have been possibly wrong during evaluation?
A moderate or severe tricuspid regurgitation has to be operated upon, sir. An
Yeah, so-
annulus size of
Annulus size is how much it should be there?
45 millimeters, sir.
Mm.
That is 4.5 centimeters or more has to be operated upon.
Mhm. And you don't consider RV function as one
RV
of the
dysfunction.
Yeah.
RV dysfunction, any evidence of RV dysfunction is also to be operated upon, sir.
address. So basically, probably they have underestimated, or probably at one time people used to think that this is secondary to severe PAH, which gets
PH, so it would
relieved after doing the. So
Mitral
mechanical prosthetic valves, what are their inherent problems in this mechanical mitral prosthesis? Are they absolutely normal valves or are they?
No, sir. The prosthetic valves are almost always smaller than the native heart valves, sir. Which is more so with aortic than with mitral. Yes, sir.
No, basically they are all stenotic valves.
Yes, sir. They are inherently stenotic.
You are replacing a severe stenosis or a severe regurgitation with
With a
mild
mild
stenosis. So inherently they are stenotic. In your knowledge, the bioprosthetic valves at mitral position as compared to the mechanical valves, which one gives you the optimal or a better mitral valve area? Mechanical valves or bioprosthetic valves?
The mechanical valves give a better area, sir. They are manufactured up to 29 millimeters.
No. It's for the same size.
Sir.
For the same size of the wall, does the mechanical wall gives you better valve area or the biological wall gives you better valve?
Biological valves, sir. If the same size, sir, biological valves would be better, sir.
Rajesh, do you agree with him?
No, sir.
No. This is Lakshman.
Biological valve. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mechanical valve. Biological valve give less area. Yes, because they have less tented portion. They occupy the lumen of the valve and create less volume.
Rajesh, do you agree on that? Dr. Rajesh? Okay, I think he is not responding.
He is there, sir.
He is there, but I think probably has muted his microphone or whatever it is. Anyway, suffice it for you to remember that for the same size of the annulus, mechanical valve gives you better valve area. It's a mistake to think that. The only time where the biological valve might give you a bigger area is only in aortic position when you do a homograft or stentless aortic valve. But in mitral position, there is no stentless biological valve, and in mitral position, the mechanical valves always has a bigger area compared to the biological valve when you are putting the same size of the annulus. Okay, it is important to remember that because Locre has said the other way. He said biological valves gives you bigger area. That is not correct. Okay,
right.
so
Right.
another reason for the persistence of what do you call TR or not failure of the pH to regress after
Sir,
valve replacement. So what do you think is the probable cause?
sir, higher obliterative component out of the total pulmonary hypertension, sir. That is
one of the things. That is
Yes,
one
sir.
of the things.
The patient process mismatch could be an option, sir, but she was told that it was functioning normally.
No. She was
Uh,
told that then okay, that's okay.
Sir.
That is the assessment
That-
of
that is a
the
possible.
treating doctor. But when
Yes,
you are when you're seeing a patient with progressive worsening of the pH,
Sir.
one of the things may be that the valve is narrow, or the valve
Yes,
is
sir.
what do we call
Patient process
patient
mismatch
process
or
mismatch. It's very
or a
rare, but in
Pranus.
mitral position, but it does happen.
Yes, sir.
And then that manifests itself as progressive worsening of the pulmonary hypertension. That's one of the things you need to consider. So,
Yes, sir.
what do you call failure to get a good,
Complete
ideal symptomatic improvement after the first surgery might have been more likely to be due to the probably TR has not been addressed, or the patient had other
Persistent
risk factors which prevented the surgeon from doing double walk. Right.
Yes, sir.
So this patient now, how are you going to manage?
Sir, she would
No,
need
first,
a tricuspid valve.
no,
Sir. Yes,
no. First, let us see the what do you call
yes.
ECG? ECG.
Yes, sir. I'll list.
Okay.
No, it's displayed.
Read it.
Yes, sir. 1 second.
She is 54 years old, right?
She's 58, sir.
No.
Yes, sir. Her
Keeping that
ECG.
in.
Sir. So this is Mrs. Vijaya's ECG. 12 lead, 4-channel ECG, showing lead 2 as the rhythm strip, a 10-second strip. There is normal standardization of 25 millimeter per second.
Wait. Standardization is not 25 millimeters. Paper speed is 25 millimeters.
Yes, sir. Yes. Paper speed is 25 millimeters per second, and voltage standardization is 10 millimeter per millivolt for both limb and chest leads.
Right.
The rhythm is atrial fibrillation, sir. The heart rate is.
So, according to you, all irregular rhythms are atrial fibrillation.
No, sir.
Then how did you?
It is irregular, beat-to-beat variability, and no discernible P waves, sir.
So basically that is it. So we have to say it is a narrow QRS complex tachycardia with varying RR intervals. No P waves are visible. No flutter waves are seen, and the QRS axis is plus 90. So you are all and basically QRS axis is
plus 90
one is almost equiphasic. So axis of plus 90 in a lady of 58 years old, normal or abnormal?
Abnormal, sir.
Abnormal.
Still
Due to what are the
right
possible
axis.
causes of right axis deviation?
Right ventricular hypertrophy, sir, is very likely in her, given the clinical conditions. Right ventricular hypertrophy is
so right ventricular hypertrophy in this patient represents what?
Secondary to pulmonary hypertension and tricuspid regurgitation.
Okay, fine. Is there a volume overloaded right ventricle here?
There is no definite evidence of a volume overload right ventricle. So there is a small RS R prime pattern in B1, but the QRS duration is still only just about 120.
No. What is your ECG criteria for RV volume overload?
The presence of RS R prime pattern in V1.
Incomplete RVD. It is just So put it in
Incomplete
one
RBB.
word, it is incomplete RBB.
Yes.
In incomplete RBB, the QRS duration is not increased. There's only RSR pattern. That's quite typical. Here it is there, RSR pattern in V1.
Is there? Yes.
What else is abnormal in V1? Apart from the rhythm and RSR. Anybody?
ST segment depression.
ST segment depression? Not really. What is the depth of the S wave? No. What is the depth of the S wave?
Yes, sir. It's less than 5 millimeters.
So what is that?
Yes, sir. Again, suggests right ventricular hypertrophy, sir. Less of.
And what about the S wave in V5, V6?
Again, sir, R wave in V5, V6 is small and S wave is significant.
So
And
it is severe RVH. It is by ECG. Okay. So the severe RVH in a patient, the clinical background has to be only due to pulmonary hypertension.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Go ahead. So there is ECG. What about the chest X-ray?
I'll just show you. Can you see it, sir?
Yeah, it is seen.
Yes, sir.
Go. Okay. Interpret the X-ray.
This is a plain X-ray of chest. Likely posterior anterior view. Slight RAO rotation, sir.
Is it pre-op
Then,
or post-op?
This is post-operative.
You should say
X-ray,
that.
sir. The sternal wires are seen, sir. And then
There is rotation of the
the
X-ray.
penetration.
Yes.
It's slightly under penetrated, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Showing there is a cardiomegaly. Evidence of right atrial enlargement.
I'll ask you a specific question. What is your evidence here on this X-ray to
Yes,
say
sir.
that there is pulmonary hypertension?
Sir, I can see the pulmonary vessels even into the lateral 1/3.
That is not the. That is not.
Yes,
No,
sir,
no,
that's
no, no. Kindly
yes,
listen.
sir.
That is not a sign of a pulmonary hypertension. That is a sign of
Pulmonary
pulmonary plethora.
Plethora. Yes, sir. The
Yeah. What we are
RTA
asking is pulmonary
enlarged, yes.
hypertension.
The
Sorry?
right descending pulmonary artery is enlarged, sir.
Is it enlarged?
Much
Yes.
larger than the trachea.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the evidence of. Is there a LA enlargement?
Yes, sir. There is evidence of left atrial enlargement in the form of widening of the carina.
Carina, right. That's very good. What type of prosthetic valve is seen there? Not able to see properly, but
Not able to appreciate.
yeah,
the
okay, fine.
sir.
Pulmonary parenchyma is normal.
Yes, sir. There is evidence of pulmonary venous congestion. Otherwise, pulmonary parenchyma as such seems normal.
Okay. Let's
Again,
see the
because of the
2D
rotation.
echo. Yeah. Let's see the 2D echo.
Yes.
Yeah, run it.
Yes, sir. This is a parasternal long axis view. This is Vijaya. A mode cut across the aortic valve leaflets, showing enlarged left atrium. Dimensions being 4.3 centimeters. mode cut across the mitral valve leaflets, actually through the LV, not mitral valve leaflet tips. Showing paradoxical septal motion. There is evidence of turbulence across the aortic valve. Leaflet appear thickened. Personal short axis view at aortic valve level. It's stuck. Yes, sir. There's some turbulence at the aortic valve. Color flow interrogation across RVOT. Both PAs are seen. There is evidence of enlargement of the pulmonary artery, sir. It is almost the same size as the aortic annulus. The aortic annulus is 3.3 centimeter, PA is 2.8 centimeter, RPA 1.6,
There is normal
LPA
or abnormal?
1.6. That is normal, sir. It
Normal.
is just
Okay.
less than aortic annulus.
Okay.
Pulse wave interrogation across the RVOT, sir.
Hmm.
Velocity of 1 meter per second, no gradient. Color flow interrogation across the tricuspid valve, showing tricuspid regurgitation moderate. The jet velocity I could not see, sir.
What is your echo criteria for severe TR?
Sir, jet velocity over 4 meters per second suggests severe TR, sir.
Jet velocity of
There are-
that indicated is severe PH. What
I'm
we
sorry.
are
Yes,
we
sir.
are asking is how do you evaluate the severity of TR by echo Doppler?
Yes, sir.
We are not talking about
Yes, there are
severity of PH.
qualitative, semi-quantitative criteria as well, sir.
Hmm.
A large vena contracta suggests severe TR, sir. Then
Do
color
you
flow.
generally do that? What is the
No, sir.
usual criteria?
No, sir, usually. Sir, the color flow extending up.
I can't speak right now. Hello?
Sir, the color flow showing up to the roof of RA suggests severe TR, sir. The color flow
Is that the
occupying.
guideline? Is that the guideline? Is that the guideline? That's not the guideline. Whether Rajesh or Lakshman? Lakshman, what is the accepted qualitative criteria for severe TR by echo Doppler?
The T velocity should be more than 3.5 meters.
No, we are all giving you the evidence of PH. I'm talking about. No, usually,
Color spectrum
people are not
occupying more
applying
than
it.
half of RS.
Suppose if there is
Sir, TR jet area more than 10 centimeters square, sir.
Mhm. And
And color spectrum occupying more than half of the RA area, sir.
what about the color jet going into IPC and hepatic vein?
Flow reversal in the hepatic vein in the pulmonary
That's a
vein.
qualitative criterion for severe for TR.
So
Also,
basically,
hepatic venous
as
flow.
I said, qualitative, semi-quantitative, and quantitative. You have to say that in that order. Okay, so what was the jet velocity here in the TR?
Could not see, sir. It was it
Uh-huh.
just vanished, sir. But
Mhm.
it seemed to be over 4 meters per second, sir.
Over 4 meters. So how
It
much
appeared
will,
that way.
how much will
4
that
meters.
be in terms of
That would be
the-
64, sir. 64 millimeters of mercury. This is aortic, continuous wave across the. This is continuous wave across the prosthetic mitral valve. Appears a bileaflet valve, sir. Continuous wave across the mitral valve, varying VTI because of the atrial fibrillation. Taking the VTI is 20.9. The gradients are 13 and 6, sir.
So 6 millimeters of mercury is the mean gradient. So how do you
Yes.
interpret that? How do you interpret that?
Yes, sir.
Is it acceptable or is it not acceptable?
Sir, because there is atrial fibrillation with a fast ventricular rate, I would like to repeat it after the control of ventricular rate, sir. Above 5 is
okay.
otherwise
No,
abnormal, sir.
No. Presently, your ventricular rate
Sir.
is 100 beats per minute, and
Sir.
your LA mean pressure or the gradient across the mitral wall mean gradient is 6 millimeters. Do you
6
think that's an
mm.
acceptable gradient or not an acceptable gradient?
It is acceptable, sir. With the heart rate
So
of
when do you
100,
say it is acceptable? That is the reason why I'm telling that in the interpretation of the gradients across the mitral wall, you need to consider the heart rate and the cardiac output. Okay, so at a heart rate of 100, your diastolic duration is short. At that time, the higher the heart rate and then the lower the gradient, the better it is. For example, a gradient of 6 millimeters when the heart rate is 100 is much better than the gradient of 8 millimeters of mercury when the heart rate is 65. So this is acceptable. Actually, the mean gradient less than 5 across the mitral prosthetic wall is a very good result. So the question of patient prosthesis mismatch does not arise here.
yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So what about the LV function?
There is evidence of left ventricular dysfunction, sir. At least mild to moderate dysfunction, sir. I would, however, like to quantitate it. This continuous flow across tricuspid valves, showing 33 millimeters of mercury. Jet velocity of.
Now, what is he measuring there? What is he measuring during diastole? There is a gradient during diastole. So it does look there is a organic tricuspid wall. There is TS plus TR. We need to really look at the tricuspid leaflets a bit more closely.
Mean gradient is 3.
No. What is your criteria to say tricuspid stenosis?
More than 2 millimeters of mercury is tricuspid.
You didn't listen to the question properly. I did not ask how do you grade the severity. I asked what is your hemodynamic criteria to say there is stenosis of the atrioventricular valves.
Diastolic gradient.
Sorry? You mean early diastolic gradient or mid diastolic gradient or what?
Diastolic gradient, sir.
Huh? Lakshman, speak out properly. Hello?
Sir, an end diastolic gradient.
Yeah, end diastolic gradient. So normally you don't expect end diastolic gradient if it is only due to TR. Okay, so here there is end diastolic gradient. Once you know that there is an end diastolic gradient cannot occur without early and mid. So basically, it is a pan diastolic gradient here throughout the diastole. You see that? You see that in that second cycle during diastole. Yes. So there is a what do you call pan diastolic gradient? See that he is measuring it. End diastolic gradient is how much? Here it is centimeters.
50
You know,
centimeters per
so.
second. So about
Mhm.
0.25, almost 1 meter per 1 mm.
Actually, usually more than that anyway, but basically there is an end diastolic gradient. Array is big, array is big. No, but then we need to really look at the tricuspid leaflets.
There been a cable
Mhm. IVC is dilated.
is enlarged almost to dilated to almost 2 centimeters. However, it is collapsing almost 50%.
So how much will be the central venous pressure according to you based on
When it
that?
is dilated and collapsing well, it's not collapsing 50%. 1.5
So the
centimeters.
distance is 2.11.
Dilated and collapsing less than 50%. The pressure would be between 10 and 15 millimeters.
Mhm.
Average of 12 to 13 can be. Propagation of hepatic venous flow
Hmm.
appreciates.
Now, I'd like to see the tricuspid leaflets, you know, in the sense that
It's very well.
only showing color Doppler. I want to see the just plain simple apical four-chamber view.
It's do not appear thickened.
I
Not appear.
see, but then the gradient is there, continuous. This is the
Yes.
pan-diastolic gradient is there. And then you said Y descent is rapid, if I remember right.
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah. So anyway, coming back after looking at the what do you call this? There is pulmonary hypertension, but there looks like a organic tricuspid wall disease. How common is organic tricuspid wall disease in patients with rheumatic heart disease?
Approximately 6%.
No. I keep telling that in the Jayadeva series, it was something like a 9 to 9.5%. This is a study by echocardiographic study of all the patients presenting to Jayadeva. This is over a period of 5 years, I think. Organic, what do you call, tricuspid wall disease in patients with multivalvular heart disease. Most of them were rheumatic. And in the rheumatic series, the incidence of organic tricuspid wall disease was less than 10%, something like a 9 to 9.5. Okay. So now what do you want to do now? So it is likely that the patient had tricuspid wall disease at the time of mitral valve replacement. Since it was stenosis and regurgitation, there's no way you can address it unless you do a tricuspid valve replacement. And double valve replacement certainly has got its own problems of higher, what do you call, perioperative mortality, higher perioperative mortality. And this patient, I saw it, it is my patient only, Vijaya.
It was in January, sir. We had presented this earlier.
Yeah. Basically now, so how do you want to address the problem now? She is symptomatic. I think I remember this patient. We have advised a tricuspid valve replacement, but neither the patient was very keen on having it, nor the surgeon was keen on doing it, because it is a redo surgery, and that too a tricuspid valve, which is not very easy to do it. So it is like that only.
So she was a bit on the obese side, sir. Her BMI at
Yeah,
first
yeah.
was 34, but with the edema.
Mm.
Otherwise, also heavier.
Mm. So what are the alternatives? Patient doesn't want surgery.
Percutaneous valve replacement can be offered.
So you need to read about this transcatheter tricuspid valve replacement surgery. So we need to do that. We need to consider that at least. Okay. So this patient probably all her symptoms are because of the tricuspid valve disease, which was not recognized at the time of valve replacement of the mitral valve, and it has become much worse and progressed, and then causing all symptoms of tricuspid valve disease and rhythm disturbances. So basically, it is the final treatment has to be only by way of valve replacement. Whether you would like to do it with surgery or with catheter base, that is the thing to be decided. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Any questions from anybody?
Sir, can there be systemic congestion with normal functioning RV, sir?
In the presence of tricuspid valve disease, the answer is yes.
Tricuspid valve disease, sir, without organic tricuspid valve disease.
This is organic.
Without organic tricuspid valve disease, normal RV systolic function and congestion, answer is probably yes, it can happen, especially in a patient with RV-MI in the setting of inferior valve MI. We have seen that. You can get elevated jugular venous pressure with abnormal response to respiration. It is a manifestation of diastolic dysfunction of the RV. Did I answer that question, madam?
In this case, he said there is systemic congestion, sir.
Systemic congestion. Yeah,
yes,
that can be explained by the
tricuspid valve involvement.
Tricuspid valve disease.
Okay,
Organic tricuspid valve disease.
Sir, isn't RV function assessment important in this case?
Yes, certainly. No, but wait. That is the reason probably why they have not addressed the tricuspid valve at the first time was probably due to because patient had tricuspid stenosis and regurgitation. And the only solution at that time was probably only to do a tricuspid valve replacement. And double valve replacement certainly has got a much higher mortality, especially in the setting of a severe pulmonary hypertension. So that is one of the things that must have happened. But then the disease has progressed and then now it is catching up.
One more thing, sir. How to correlate severe PAH and parasternal lift?
I'm not sure whether it is a severe PAH, but PAH, parasternal lift is there, but according to the presenter who presented it, it was more like a, what do you call, volume overloaded right ventricle rather than a pressure overloaded right ventricle. The fact that the patient also has a severe tricuspid regurgitation, that must have what you call overshadowed. But all these are all clinical signs, So all this clinical medicine has got its own limitations. In a patient who has got isolated severe PAH without TR, probably you can get a classical parasternal heave, wherein there is lifting of the parasternal area and sustained lift is there. Sustained, by which I mean it lasts for more than 50% of the systole. That you see it in, especially in primary pulmonary hypertension and severe PH without TRs in the setting of severe mitral stenosis. So this possibility here is that there is severe TR because the candidate has said there is pulsatile LUO. And there is a pansystolic murmur at the lower end of the sternum. So, and then there is ECG shows RSR pattern. So all these things are indicative of a volume overloaded right ventricle. Now this combined pressure overload and volume overload, when we recognize it clinically, probably the answer is no. We're going to make some errors. So like clinical medicine has got its own limitations, especially when it is a complicated one. Isolated pressure overload, isolated diastolic volume overload of the right RV, like in classical atrial septal defect without pulmonary hypertension. It's very classical. You can see more of pulsations and less of lift. Whereas in pulmonary hypertension without TR, you see more of lift and less of pulsations. So these are all possibilities are more likely to be. Any other questions?
Sir, in case of TR with normal RV function, can there be elevation of mean column of JVP, sir?
That is normotensive TR is less common as compared to hypertensive TR. Normotensive TR usually in adults, as we have seen, normotensive TR often happens in patients with tricuspid regurgitation secondary to infective endocarditis of the tricuspid wall, mostly seen in drug addicts, okay, or any other condition where there is injury to the tricuspid wall, either during surgery or during the interventions. At that point of time, most of the time you get, the classical example of a what do you call normotensive TR, congenital heart disease, is going to be Epstein's anomaly. There, the RA is so huge that you hardly ever see a rise in the jugular venous pressure. So it depends upon the degree of TR and the onset of TR. If it is a gradual onset, RA dilates to the extent that it can accommodate a lot of regurgitant volume without causing any rise in the pressure. Something like a chronic severe MR versus acute MR. Same way, chronic severe TR versus acute TR. So the rise in jugular venous pressure is an indication of the response of the right atrium to the severity of TR. Mostly if it is chronic severe TR, unlikely to rise it. If it is acute severe TR, probably it's going to rise the venous pressure.
In the present case, rise in JVP, should we attribute it to RV dysfunction, sir?
No, there is evidence of TR clinically. So TR clinically, and it is a severe TR. Even the liver is enlarged and pulsatile. So it is a very severe TR. So severe TR, and actually even the echo shows RA is very big. But then patient also has probably in my from what little I have seen on the echo, there is some amount of RV dysfunction. The tricuspid annulus or the TAPSE does not look that great in this particular echocardiogram.
Well, sir, can we rely on it in a post-operative patient, sir?
Which one? TAPSE? Post-operatively, it is going to be difficult, agreed, but there are other parameters of change in the fractional area change of the RV.
FSC was also bad.
Sorry?
In her case, FSC was also bad.
Yeah, maybe fractional area change has to be done, and nowadays we have got evidence of tissue Doppler evaluation of the RV systolic function, the S waves of the myocardium. So fractional area change, and then finally you also have got this high index where you evaluate both systolic and diastolic, IVRT and ICT by RVET ejection time. So there are various methods. Agreed. Compared to the LV, RV evaluation of the function is going to be more difficult.
Sir, how can we say in this case patient has severe PVH with severe PH, sir, when we have a normal functioning prostate?
No. I don't think we said severe PVH. Actually,
I think, sir, it was said in the diagnosis, sir.
At least I didn't write it.
Yes, sir. I said it, sir. I said
because
severe
there was history of PND, if I remember it. Orthopnea, you said.
Sir,
Yeah. History
orthopnea,
of
sir.
orthopnea is there. Usually what
She was
happens
breathless
is,
at present,
yeah.
and she had crackles, vessel crackles.
No, but in the history wise, you said there is orthopnea, but no
Yes, sir.
PND.
Yes, sir.
Usually what happens is when the patient has got a right-sided disease dominant, like in this patient, the distal valvular heart disease is underestimated, and symptoms of actually pulmonary congestion will be markedly less once you develop a significant tricuspid valve disease, either tricuspid regurgitation or tricuspid stenosis, and it often manifests as low cardiac output and systemic venous congestion. Loknath, I'll join the meeting in about 5 minutes. Okay, so but by and large, I didn't make a note anyway. It is difficult to say pulmonary venous hypertension plus PAH at the same breath, although the cause of pulmonary hypertension in a patient with mitral valve disease is basically PVH, passive component plus an active component, that is reactive as well as obliterative.
Sir, in the history, it was said that prostatic valve was evaluated and it was told to be normally functioning. And even after history, how much we should say the severity of PVH in this case, sir? Because in the history, it was mentioned that prostatic valve is normal.
No, prostatic valve is normal according to the person who is evaluated. But a person who is giving a history of orthopnea, what do you make of it?
So, could it be only because of PH and right heart failure, sir?
Orthopnea?
Precapillary PH.
No, orthopnea.
Because of ascites only, sir.
Ascites is different. Orthopnea is, probably patient might have mistaken interpretation. But once you say classical orthopnea, then there's a left heart disease. Orthopnea and PND, both are indicative of left heart disease from the historical point of view. Agreed that in patients with constrictive pericarditis with massive ascites and tricuspid valve disease with massive ascites, they may feel uncomfortable when they are lying down. That may be interpreted as orthopnea. But by and large, when you say classical orthopnea, classical PND is almost rare even in ascites. The patient has PND, it's almost a foolproof sign of a left heart disease.
There was left ventricular dysfunction according to the echo, sir. Probably that can explain the orthopnea and pulmonary venous hypertension.
No. But usually for the symptoms of orthopnea and PND to occur, you need to have a right ventricle pushing enough blood across the pulmonary circulation to cause pulmonary congestion. If the right ventricle is failing or right ventricle is underfilled because of tricuspid valve disease, it is so unusual. Actually, it is said that a patient with mitral stenosis, when they develop relief of symptoms of PND and orthopnea, whether there is an obstruction in the pulmonary vascular level or there is a valvular heart disease proximal to the mitral valve, which is limiting the forward flow to the mitral area. So these are the two obstructions that can happen. And that is the one that will relieve the symptoms. And patient gets a false sense of relief that his disease has become less, which as a matter of fact, it is not. As a matter of fact, it is the occurrence of the proximal valve disease that is making his symptoms less. And it will be only at the expense of systemic venous congestion. Is a pulmonary congestion, now you will have more of systemic congestion by way of edema of the feet and onset of hepatomegaly, causing abdominal distension and also ascites, which can cause embarrassment to the breathing. But by and large, when a patient with a left heart disease develops a right heart disease, he is symptomatically better by way of relief of dyspnea, relief of nocturnal dyspnea, and relief of orthopnea.
Sir, one more doubt, sir. This patient is having severe PH, sir, and mitral valve is okay. So I assume it is likely precapillary component, sir. So what will happen to his PH after TVR, sir? Will it still progress, or is there anything
I'm
like
not sure
equivalent for
actually.
a-
First of all, I think before we do a patient tricuspid valve replacement, if you see the criteria for evaluation of PAH or PH, whatever reason, it has to be documented about the presence and severity by right heart cath. Okay, and then you need to calculate the pulmonary vascular resistance. Okay, and then you need to know how much is the vascular reactivity, by which I mean reactive or vasoconstrictive component to the pulmonary hypertension. Now, patient with long-standing mitral valve disease certainly can develop organic pulmonary vascular disease, that is precapillary, that is at the level of arterioles. If that is the case, then probably we will have more problems in the perioperative period when you're replacing the tricuspid valve. That is for sure. Did I answer your question, doctor? Hello?
Sir, do we need to add vasodilators in this case, sir? Because there is no evidence of any transpulmonary gradient because mean LA pressure is normal, sir. And there is second
No.
stenosis
Mean
only.
LA pressure may be normal because of the proximal tricuspid valve disease. That's why I said in this patient, before you attempt to do anything, you need to do a right heart cath to document all these things.
Okay, sir.
So, but if you say now, you may be underestimating the degree of pulmonary hypertension, especially in a patient who is having atrial fibrillation. So, in a patient who has got a left heart disease and then you give pulmonary vasodilators, you may be doing what you call, a patient may go into significant left heart failures. Okay, because the obstruction which is protecting the left side certainly is not there, and then he will have more preload to the left side.
In this case, sir, but mitral valve is normal and there is no obstruction, sir. In this case,
Mitral valve is not. You say mitral valve is normal when there is no obstruction because your preload is less. The gradient across the mitral valve is proportional to the mitral valve area, the heart rate, and then the cardiac output. If the output increases, we really don't know what's going to happen. But from the mean what you call gradient of 6 millimeters at a heart rate of 100 per minute, probably there is no significant stenosis, probably. But then we need to get all the data by doing the cardiac cath before you prescribe pulmonary vasodilators. What is the purpose of adding a pulmonary vasodilator to this patient?
I was thinking that this patient is having second stenosis and the pulmonary hypertension is not secondary to left heart now because mitral valve.
No. Pulmonary hypertension is not to that. But when there is an organic tricuspid valve disease, how this is going to help the patient unless you relieve the tricuspid valve problems?
After tricuspid valve, will the pulmonary artery pressure come down or it will progress, sir?
That's the reason why I'm telling you should do a
Yes,
right
sir.
heart
I got
cath
it, sir.
before.
Yes, sir.
So right heart cath should be done. Quantify the degree of pulmonary hypertension, quantify the degree of reactive component, and then see it. Probably once you are replacing the tricuspid valve, perioperatively, if you have got problems, then we have got no option except to give pulmonary vasodilators if the RV function is borderline. Any other questions, comments?
Sir, one last thing, sir.
Yeah.
In something like a tricuspid regurgitation, we know the V wave becomes prominent. Whether we should say jugular venous pressure is elevated or not, Not very sure. So the peak obviously appears
Wait.
high because of the V wave.
Now, how do you measure the jugular venous pressure at the bedside? How do you quantify it?
We look at the peak.
It is
of the
measured
venous
as the
column.
absolute height, so-called that the original method of measuring the venous pressure at the bedside is to measure from the sternal angle to the peak wave of the venous column.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the problem is actual measurement. So we have to say that at the bedside, we cannot evaluate the mean pressure. Mean
Yes,
pressure,
sir.
mean pressure is dependent not only upon the positive waves but also upon the
Also
negative
the
waves
negative.
like X and Y, which we cannot evaluate at the bedside. That is the reason why there's a very poor correlation between the RA mean pressure evaluated at cardiac cath and RA mean pressure evaluated at the bedside.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So can we say in the exam that the mean pressure cannot be given by clinical examination? This is jugular venous.
No. Actually, your statement at the bedside will be jugular venous pressure elevated. Don't say mean pressure or what do you call A-wave, atrial pressure, ventricular pressure. Just say jugular venous pressure is elevated and which waves are prominent. A wave is prominent, V wave is prominent, X descent is normal, Y descent is normal. And response to respiration. Is it falling during the inspiration or not falling? Failure to fall or even a what do you call paradoxical increase in what do you call the pressure, then you say it is abnormal. So in the examination you say that the jugular venous pressure is elevated. Don't add the word mean jugular venous pressure, because mean pressure we cannot measure it at the bedside.
Few examiners will ask the mean column height and A wave height, V wave height like that, sir.
No. You see, what do they ask?
What is the
Please
height
repeat the
of the
question.
JVP? Is it mean column height of the JVP? Is it raised or only V wave is raised like that?
Whether the mean
No.
column
Actually,
pressure is
you'll have to remind them. No. It is very straight. Answer is it is very straight. At the bedside, we can only say venous pressure is elevated or not elevated. And there's a very poor correlation between the measured venous pressure at the bedside and the mean central venous pressure. And if you say how can you evaluate the mean pressure at the bedside, it is something like telling it is the background level of venous column against which all the waves are oscillating. So the background level, suppose if it is elevated up to the middle of the neck, the jugular venous pressure, and at no point of time it is coming down, obviously the mean pressure is elevated. But how can you measure the mean pressure at the bedside? Because mean pressure is a time-integrated pressure. It takes into account both the positive waves and then the negative waves. At best, we can evaluate only the positive waves, and we cannot measure the extent of negative waves. So your assessment of the mean pressure is not going to be correct when you compare it to the cardiac cath or invasive procedures.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Right. Okay. Right.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.